Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Rebound. Whether you're just joining us for this change session or whether you're going to join us today for all 7 of our 45-minute sessions, welcome, and thank you for giving us some of your time. We absolutely hope that there is some amazing practical insights, some amazing ideas, some things that you can take away and apply in your business, whether it be today or whether it be tomorrow or down the track, so that you can get ready for the other side of all of this COVID stuff. And that's the whole theme for today. So totally remaining sympathetic, totally remaining supportive to all those businesses that are still struggling, and even those businesses that are yet to feel the struggles as well, because there's this second wave of industries now that are starting to feel the struggles. But there is also this group of businesses that were starting to ask the different questions, starting to ask about the other side of this and what they can do to take advantage of the opportunities that this will undoubtedly present. Big shout out to our speakers and our support partners for donating their time and for spreading the word on Rebound today. So obviously today we have some amazing speakers across the entire day, none of which I'll introduce ours for this session shortly. But especially some of our support partners who have been out there spreading the word for us to make sure we have as many people as we can supported and ready for the other side. So especially people like Xero, CCIQ, the Valley Chamber of Commerce, Greater Blacktown Business Chamber, Macquarie Bank, and of course all the businesses behind the speakers that we have here today. Of course, please jump on social, spread the word, #Rebound, or tag us in on Twitter, business_depot, or on Facebook and LinkedIn, just Business Depot, one word. So let's get into it. So our topic first up this morning is, are you change ready? Now, I love this concept of being change ready. So we've pulled together some absolute experts in their field to give us not only their practical insights, but their technical and insights as well. So first of all, we have Karen Fuster. Karen's from Change 2020 and Adaptive Minds. Karen, I mean, you coach and you advise and you've researched on change and all those types of things. So really looking forward to get your insights in that. And of course, don't hold back giving us the insights on your own business sort of change stories as well. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
And we have Martin Betts. Martin is an absolute leader within the university sector, but also has been the previous chair of Business South Bank, which is like a chamber of small businesses at South Bank in Brisbane. Also been executive dean of science. So you've got a science and engineering sort of background. So Martin, really, I know you're yourself going through a bit of change at the moment with sort of leaving the university sector and consulting and speaking yourself. So really looking forward to your insights today as well. So welcome, Martin.
Thanks, John. Great to be here.
And of course, we have Rebecca Mahalik from Business Depot Sydney. Rebecca is a chartered accountant, but more importantly, in this discussion, she's out there sort of advising businesses on their deep strategy and how they implement things all day, every day. So Rebecca will be sharing her on the ground, in the trenches sort of insights with the businesses that she deals with. So welcome, Rebecca.
Morning, John.
Now, if I can just ask one thing of all our attendees today, we'd love to get to as many of your questions as we possibly can. Please try and use the Q&A function down the bottom rather than the chat. If you have a specific question, that'll just be so much easier for us to monitor. So let's get into it. So Karen, as I said, you work with business owners, business managers, business leaders, you know, all day, every day. You've got your own business and your own team that you have to think about. Do you think anyone was actually ready for something like we have gone through in the last couple of months?
Absolutely not. No one at all. But I have to say, you know, people had their business continuity plans and I dusted them off and they served them well to a degree. But generally speaking, no one foresaw this coming to this degree. People understand disruption, they understand change, but this was the volume, the pace, the complexity all at once, and also just the general fear around health and well-being, mental and physical. And so it was certainly, in my experience of everyone who we've worked with and spoken to, absolutely no one was ready for this. But they've surprised themselves actually at how well they've done, which has been amazing. I'm loving watching how people have really achieved great things.
Because I mean, most of us have been through a GFC or some sort of crisis over the years, but this has been a different one because of that health and human sort of element to it, hasn't it? And so that whole thought around safety and everything's really come into play with this event. I don't want to call it a crisis, but this event.
Yeah, no, most certainly. So you're right about the GFC. I mean, that was fairly, fundamental for so many organisations in terms of trying to understand how they're going to survive this sort of event in their time. But this has affected our communities. It's affected our kids. It's affected our essential workers who we just can't get by without. And I think that one of the things that really has occurred is our level of awareness and compassion has really gone through the roof. Just understanding that we need to check on our neighbour, understanding that, those nurses are exhausted, understanding that the kids are frightened, understanding that our partner may have lost their job and we're trying to keep things going. And then meanwhile, we're trying to actually adapt to sitting here in this world and missing people. And, fundamentally humans love to be connected. And so I say to many people, I feel like we're all in a petri dish. It's the world's biggest experiment, and we'll just see how we go. And I have to say, overall, I've been amazed and astounded at the remarkable way so many people have responded and rebounded, which has been fabulous.
Absolutely. Now, Martin, Karen mentioned there, most corporates or most organisations or some had some sort of continuity plan. The universities that you were in a leadership role of, did they have a continuity plan? And if you can answer that, and if so, did they have a pandemic plan? And did the pandemic plan actually think that business would be shut down?
Well, I think just like Karen said about businesses, I don't think many universities saw an event like this coming on this scale, for sure. There's been incremental change over a long period of time. But this has been the biggest disruption to happen to the university sector in Australia and worldwide for 600 years, I dare say. And I can recall when SARS was a phenomenon. I was organising a conference at the time, and I can recall the issues around international delegates being excluded out of the multinational attendees of the conference. We all forgot about that soon after that. Did we have pandemic plans? No. Did we have business continuity plans? Not really of the scale that was needed for this. This is a new part of our language in universities, just like it has been in businesses. And I'm pretty sure that we're going to have them for a fair bit into the future.
Because how long ago was it that you left the university sector, Martin? It's only very recent, isn't it?
Oh, it's just a couple of months, yes. I planned to leave the university sector at the end of last year in what I thought was going to be a period of relative calm. I certainly didn't see this coming. I don't think anyone did, but it's actually creating enormous opportunities for universities. It's creating opportunities for me. And I think it's creating opportunities, and I think that's very much the subject of the sessions here today, isn't it? That whilst none of us expected it, once we do get through the other side of this, there'll be universities transforming, businesses transforming, learning happening in different ways, customers experiencing products and services in different ways. That's the time of great opportunity.
Yeah, and the universities have adapted and transformed pretty quickly, haven't they, Martin? Pretty much going online in a matter of weeks.
Well, in some cases, it was in a matter of a week. Most Australian universities went fully online for partway through the first semester of this year. Some of them paused studies for a week and extended the semester, but others just converted mid-air, as it were. And I mean, there has been infrastructure and some of the practices of digitally recording and making available online learning, but we've still been designing our campuses and designing our programs and designing student experiences up until now with very much that blend of making use of technology and the social interaction that takes place in a physical sense.
So what do you think enabled them to go online so quickly? Was it just because they'd already had half a toe in the water and had they already thought about where university sector was going anyway, and therefore it was just a matter of bringing plans forward rather than totally reinventing things?
I think it was. I mean, it was a combination of some level of preparedness, but also necessity. I mean, universities operate on a very different business model and sort of income model to other businesses. Most students register at the start of the year. There's a census date in March, ironically, with this phenomena when your income gets locked in for the year. And this phenomena broke just about 2 or 3 weeks before the whole year's income stream of, in many cases, $1 billion for a university was about to be locked in with students making a choice or not. So if you didn't get your stuff online and you were closing your campus, you were potentially saying goodbye to a very large proportion of your total income all in one episode. And I know that's happened with other businesses, but necessities for change like that have never been there for universities before.
Rebecca, are you seeing similar stories in the SME world, I suppose, of this transformation, or I suppose even just bringing forward plans to implement so much quicker?
Absolutely. And like Martin said, it's being driven by necessity. Businesses needed to figure out how they were going to fund things, particularly in the early days when the pandemic hit and we were locked down. We didn't know what government support was going to be available, and we didn't know what money was going to be able to come in. So businesses had to make other decisions to stay alive, pay themselves, pay their bills and pay their staff.
So that necessity is pretty key, isn't it? You know, everyone's been talking about disruption for decades, haven't they? Karen, why do you think it is? Is it just necessity that's enabled us to create this real innovation and this real change now?
Yeah, a significant driver, most certainly. They had no choice. They had to do something. I mean, it was being driven by the government. You will have your workforce move out of these workplaces, things like that. We will shut down schools. A lot of this was happening to people. And interestingly, when change happens to people, that's when we get most frightened. That's when we get most resistant, because we're not part of it. We don't know what's going to happen, and we don't have very much control at all. And so where I think organisations responded really well was, all right, well, this is a framework that we've been given. We will go remote. These things will occur. Now watch us do it. And, you know, we've seen some extraordinary stories. I've got a client who had a 2-year strategy to go to be a paper-free or paperless office. They did it in a week. And they're astounded by themselves, and they're high-fiving themselves, because it was, and I have to say, the degree of trepidation about going paperless when it was put forward in the strategy was enormous. No one's even thought about it, because we just had to do it. And I have to say, that's one of the great things that drives amazing innovation, is when you're up against it, when you've got some boundaries around you, the way you can think differently, the way you can push yourself is really quite exceptional. And so in this circumstance, we didn't have a choice. If we were going to adhere to what the government said, we had to do it. But also, as I said earlier, the driver of personal health and well-being, and that connection to our human need to look after ourselves and our family and those we love, made us move really quite rapidly and think about things from quite a different perspective.
Yeah, there's a great model I refer to a lot by a group called Mindshop, which talks about a change success model and talks about this concept of change readiness. And one of their criteria in there is the need for change. And if the team don't see the need for change, then they say, well, you're going to struggle to have success with the change. So here we go, we absolutely need it. And I suppose what's important, I love what you said there about there's that human element to this one as well. And that it's not just a need for the business, it's a need for the humans that are involved in there as well. Karen, there's a lot of models around there talking about leadership through change and through events like this. And there's this 3-phase sort of model. And I know that first stage tends to be around, okay, we just get in place and we worry about the practicalities and those types of things. What are the next 2 phases?
So once we've got ourselves understanding what the practicalities are, it's around about looking at defining, so how do we respond to this? And I think that's certainly where we see organisations really grappling now. There's been a general desire for, like, we followed the rules. So everyone caught the public transport or had their car park and went to work. And now what's happening is people are working out that they might want to do things differently, and there's real benefit from that. And so looking at how do we respond to this, and again, not just from top down, it just won't work if we do this top down, and then how we create that next normal. And I think it's really important that it's not a new normal, it is the next normal, because as you mentioned earlier, there was a GFC and we did something differently. There's been digital disruption and we did something differently, and we will continue to. And whilst this is on a much grander scale, there will be something else that comes along. And if we have that mindset that we can keep moving, we didn't break, we adapted, because we're incredibly adaptable as a species, then we'll be okay. But I think that the first one to look at here is, how are we going to respond? Take all the lessons that we learned. What do we do well? What do we not want to bring forward into this new next normal for us? and then start to implement that, and making sure that people are reminded about how well that they did go, that they didn't fall over, that we just didn't break.
I love that concept of next normal. Martin, I'm interested to get your sort of thoughts on, will we ever go back to what was normal, and you're on board with this next normal sort of concept?
Well, I very much am. I don't think going back is an option or in any way likely. And I think the concept you're introducing there of teams working together and the way that people responded and the way that Karen mentioned is, I saw that so much in both the university that I was part of, in the university sector, but also a small trade association, a business sales bank that you mentioned. In universities, the idea where previously you had top-down people setting of strategies and policies and committees coming up with, this was a case where individual academics had to overnight and in a couple of days learn how to do things, and were so willing to share them with others in that sort of community feel. And in the same way, Brisbane South Bank couldn't be more different from the university that I worked at, only 5 staff, but it was the youngest and most recent person in, the new graduate who had a grasp of some social media, who was able to facilitate that team of 5 and a member organization of 150 companies learn how to do social networking to replace the drink in the hand sort of quarterly physical networks that had been so much part of the organization. I think we'll see different people thrive, and we need to, as leaders, look in different places for our innovation than we've been used to looking.
I mean, it sounds like one of the leadership lessons out of this was the leaders letting go a little bit and letting the team just sort of run some things and trusting them to make some decisions. Have you seen that, Rebecca, with the businesses you've been working with?
Absolutely, and not just the businesses we work with, even with our own business. Sending staff home and letting them work remotely requires a huge level of trust between the employee and the employer to make sure that everyone's going to do what they need to do to service clients and get the business keep running. And it's definitely a new world, and I can't imagine it's ever going to go back to the way that it was before. No one wants it to. That's the reality.
So what about now that people are potentially coming back into the office, maybe not in the same way they ever had? And Karen, I mean, what are you seeing with the leaders out there and those people that are trying to get their team back into the office? Have you got any sort of insights or any observations?
Yeah, certainly. I actually think there's, unconscious bias is something that we're not conscious about. It's when you're standing here and listening to leaders project the outcome they want. I think unconscious bias is alive and well. So there's those who have a strong preference to have everyone around them, where they can see them, where they can easily engage. And the way they tell the story of success or otherwise while they were working remote is that we didn't quite nail that project and that took too long and meetings were difficult, et cetera, et cetera. There's another leader who can actually tell a different story with the same data, which was that, meetings were shorter, they were more succinct, we actually got things done. We actually adapted to the way we engage with people. So there's a whole lot of people who were looking at how they're telling the story. And I was actually facilitating a workshop last week or the week before, I feel like every day is Tuesday, recently anyway, and we were talking, I was using Zoom and we ran a poll about, how do you feel your team feel, readiness to come back? And overwhelmingly, the exec team and the senior leadership team said, we think there's a degree of cautiousness. And that was really challenging for some of the people on the exec team to hear. And they used the word, I feel guilty. Are we forcing them to do this? Why is this happening? That was only 3 months. Why have people adapted so rapidly? And as Rebecca just said, because there's a desire. There's a desire. And, you mentioned earlier that you can't create change unless someone, they understand why you're doing it and they want to do it and they can see the benefit. Well, this change is driven by desire, and it's actually driven by people's hearts and minds, not just their minds where they're thinking, well, I better do this so I retain my job. And so I think leaders are really, it's a really interesting period of time for them. They are doing, mostly the ones that we're dealing with and are privileged to work with, are doing a tremendous job. I think that fundamentally listening, like not hearing, but like really listening to what it is that people are saying is critical at the moment. And you have to work out what's best for the business. Like we can't have a situation where we say, all right, well, everyone can work any way you want because it will suit you. The business must be sustainable and ideally grow. Otherwise, we're all on a couch watching Netflix forever. And that's not actually the effective here. So the leaders must be, decisive. They have to take a step forward, but they have to listen and as much as possible, put their bias to the side.
Do you think there's potentially that we haven't actually built more trust during this time, and that's why some of these leaders maybe want everyone to come back into the office?
Trust is such an interesting thing. Yes, in short, the answer is yes. If I can't see you, how do I know if you're doing your job? The fact of the matter is that we've had global organisations for decades and decades, and we've found a way to adapt. And we know that the office in Luxembourg has opened, or the office in Wollongong has, or whatever it might be. But now that we've had this pandemic and everyone had to go remote, I think the better term is we're just distributed. We've got a distributed workforce. Some people are in the James Street office, as you are. Some are in the Sydney office, as Rebecca is. You'll have some team, because I can see some people wandering behind you, but I'm sure you've also got some people who are working remote, or you've got a distributed workforce model. And building that trust is absolutely paramount. And it's, it's interesting. Trust has always been, it's at the core of every relationship. We can't do anything without trust, but it certainly has got a massive spotlight on it now, but more so for the person who is saying, can I trust you? So I once always trusted you because you were in the office. What is it now that is putting that sense of doubt within me? And it's about me. It's not about what's going on, generally speaking. The behaviour, generally speaking, is not different. It's actually about me and my ability to trust. And that's a big thing for leaders to understand.
And do you think that's as simple as my unconscious sort of bias, or that I suppose my job would be easier if everybody's here and I can see you?
Yeah, without doubt. And there's also some leaders who are, they're really, I got to the top, I wear my great suit, I'm on level 24, and that gives me a bit of status, and I like it when people come to see me. And now, I'm in a brown cardigan, maybe with slippers on, who knows, sitting in some suburb. Have I got that same level of status? Am I still have that level of respect? Do I still feel like I've got this? And so I think leaders are really, really struggling from that perspective. Not everyone, but it's a time for them to evolve as well in terms of their own thinking.
Would you like to add to that, Martin?
Yeah, I'm not sure that brown cardigans is the way to go, but I couldn't agree more with the overall spirit of what Kerin's saying there. And I think what I'm seeing is that times like this, I think it's a time of great humanity is coming to the fore in all of our lives and in our working lives and in our business organizations. And I think the principles that were always the principles of what made a good leader are becoming even clearer and more graphically demonstrated right now. And I think we've used a lot of the words there. That I think trust is absolutely important. Those that are able to live in themselves with trusting and give space to people who are really doing it tough amongst their workforces and their home and personal and partner situations are going to get the best out of those people and build the greatest loyalty. And the other concept that I'd introduce into this, which I think is called for generally, but at these times more than any other time, is the need for empathy. It's the need to understand what the situation is that your staff and your customers are in, rather than just as you're seeing the world from where you sit or where you stand. That's what's going to really help people thrive right now, I'm sure.
I heard someone say the other day, I really liked it. They said in corporate world in particular, or maybe just in business generally, EQ used to be a nice to have in business, but after COVID, it's going to be a must have. And I reckon that is absolutely sort of spot on. I mean, we've always invested a lot in EQ and understanding personalities and self-awareness and all those types of things. But I know myself, I struggle with knowing what the right thing is for me to do as a leader at a particular point in time. Like we said before, at the beginning of this, it was actually about letting go and trusting them to run with things. I actually feel we're now in a phase where they're going, okay, now show me what, not show me what to do, but now lead me, now show me my way out of here. And I think a lot of business owners and leaders struggle to know when the right leadership sort of role is necessary. Would you agree with that? Anyone like to comment on that?
I mean, I'll just pick up on it again if you like, and I'd go back to the point that I just made, is that how would you know when people are ready to be led without listening to them?
Yeah. And I suppose that's really listening. You might be perceiving some things, but maybe that is not the reality.
So I think when when the ease of being in contact with and communication with people is at its most challenged, the actual need to make that open communication and connection has never been greater. And the great leaders will find ways of overcoming, and the great followers will find some ways of overcoming some of those barriers, and are doing some miraculous things in doing so, I'm sure.
Rebecca, do you see the business leaders challenging with those same types of things, or do you think they're preoccupied with worrying about how they're paying wages? Do you think they're actually even thinking about this in SME land?
I actually think for the first time ever, they're really worried about it. Being a really great leader is very much at the front of my business's minds. Like all of the clients, they're thinking about, how do I make sure that I keep my team inspired, keep them engaged in work, keep the customers coming, and knowing that that responsibility of bringing it all together really lies on them. And as everyone said before, the focus is a little bit different. It's on taking care of people, not necessarily on having the strongest business, although that is still very important. Right now, we're really looking at the people on both sides. And it's not just in business. If we even just look at our leaders in government at the moment and the way that they're reacting to all this the situation, they've made swifter decisions in the last 2 months than I think they have ever done in my whole entire life. Things have changed overnight, and there are responses to the way the community wants them to act. Sometimes they do it in the way that we want, but then other times they have to just make the serious, correct decision to keep us all safe and to take care of the country, and have also been faced between the keeping people safe versus keeping the economy running, which is the same problems that a business owner faces. Keeping my team safe or keeping the business running? What do you do? What's more important?
And it's one of those unique qualities, isn't it, of a founder or a leader of a small business, is, you know, that business is their baby, and they really look after their team from a family sort of perspective. And I know all the conversations I've been having with people, no one ever wanted to lay anybody off. No one really wanted to have those hard conversations. They did it if they had to protect their other baby. But that human element of it was very, very strong.
John, if I can just add into there in that conversation around, you know, I'm ready to be led now. You know, what, as humans, our brains, we crave certainty, and that's what we haven't had for a long period of time. And to be fair, I don't think that we can actually offer certainty. I've been talking to our clients about provide clarity. What can you be absolutely clear on? And it is that, you know, we'll have an A and B team, we'll do rotational, you know, return to the office, or every Tuesday we'll continue to have our 10 to 11 team, all hands on deck meeting, or whatever it might be. But to remove our desire for certainty and focus more on clarity, and it might just be one step, and that's okay, but that's what we're doing today. And I think that that's what's great leadership at the moment. Absolutely listening and empathy, everything that everyone has said without any doubt. And I think that, you know, to speak to Rebecca's point, that where the government's got in trouble is where they haven't been clear. You know, it's like, well, I don't know, the kids at school, or are we not at school? Are we at work? We're not. And when we don't have certainty, we don't have clarity, that's when it's really quite tricky. And so I've been talking to our leaders and our clients about what can you be absolutely clear about, take that one step towards it, and then say, okay, I'll know something else tomorrow and I'll be clear about that then.
I love that. I mean, that's a whole topic in itself, I think, Karen, that clarity versus certainty. Yeah. So what about when they don't like what you're giving them clarity on? What if they don't like it?
Yeah, and look, that's the way of the world, right? There's a whole lot of things that people don't like. I think the other thing that we've been saying to people is that we want to make sure that the organisations are fit, they're healthy, and they're able to move on. And so there'll be some difficult things, and that might have been the fact that we've done reduced hours, or that you actually are required to come back 3 days a week, or you're a customer-facing role, so in actual fact you're back, whatever it might be, and to get them back into building, buying into why we exist. So purpose-led organisations are going to thrive at this particular time. Those with strong cultures will also thrive, because I'll know that I've got to give a bit to get a bit. Organisations that were low trust, or, you know, are already grappling with, you know, to have engagement and other such areas like that, people will make choices. And I think that's the other thing that will happen, is that when people look at the people around them in their organisation, in their community, and say, well, they've got this sort of opportunity, but my organisation hasn't evolved to that degree, people will make very, very, very clear decisions when the market picks up about, is this actually the place where I can be my best? And so I
But
think
would you,
retention of talent is going to be an interesting challenge as well.
yeah. So would you say to those businesses where the team feel, or maybe they're giving the feedback, that they don't know what their purpose is, or they don't know why this business exists, is now the time to sort of open that up, or is some of this stuff still too raw?
No, I absolutely. I mean, hopefully, it's always sort of one of the fundamental or platform conversations, but it's absolutely a time to reinforce it because, you know, I think about, you know, my daughter. She's studying nursing, but she's also a swim instructor at a local swimming pool, and they're still closed down. But they go there once a week or twice a week just to clean it and just to be there. And it's because it's a community place, and it's where the kids learn their lessons. It's where people do their laps. It's where, you know, we come together, and that's part of the conversations when the leaders when the, you know, the owners of the pool come together. They talk about why we're going as fast as we can to get ourselves back open, and why they want to keep the staff together, albeit for a very small period of time. But it's against that connection, and we exist for this reason. So absolutely, that applies to all organisations.
And I reckon you're spot on. I reckon that's the phase we're in at the moment. We've had the phase one, the practicality is just get your computer set up at home, get working. But now it feels like there is this desire for connection and getting back to connecting with their teams and community and so forth. And I understand the next phase typically then is we'll paint the picture, how we're going to get out of this, show them the plan. This is how we're going to do it. To get out of it. Karen, sorry, I want to stay on you for a moment if you don't mind. I know you've done some amazing research and have an amazing tool around the tolerance for ambiguity. Now, I understand the tolerance for ambiguity is something, you know, being able to deal with an ambiguous sort of situation is something that makes you change ready. Can you talk us through the tolerance for ambiguity and I suppose what are the key components to it?
Yeah, sure. So we kicked off a research project with QT 4 years ago now, and continuing on with the business school. And the reason we did it is that we were noting that leaders they weren't actually keeping up with the pace and the complexity of change. So change as it once was I'm at A, I need to get to B, and I'm pretty much going to draw a plan, and hopefully I'll get there. But it's not like that anymore because of the complexity and, as I say, the pace of change. So what we wanted to do is understand, why did some people respond better to all that degree of uncertainty and the unknown? Why can they progress forward and make a decision without all the information? How do they get comfortable? So we started this research project, and it's just been fascinating. I have to say, I love it to understand, you know, how we work and how we operate and what drives us. And as a result of that, we developed an assessment. And the assessment's a self-assessment, and it's been recognised globally as both valid and reliable. And essentially, it identifies for you against a benchmark group, you know, where you sit on a continuum of your tolerance of ambiguity and uncertainty. And it gives you individual facets of, you know, how you respond to when you're in the middle of uncertainty. That how do you manage it? How can you respond when you're thrown a new project or something that you've never seen before, and we can't rely on past learnings? And what is it that you do that seeks out your desire to do something different? And so it gives you this individual data, and it's linked to a program which is called Adapting to Ambiguity. And the program's, again, all research-based, that indicates that certain behaviours, and it's all mindset and behaviour. There's nothing that says go and develop another Gantt chart, because that's just not going to do it, I promise you. It's all about mindsets and behaviours, about how do I continue to build my tolerance and adaptability to uncertainty and ambiguity.
And there's three categories that you talk about, isn't there?
Yes, yeah. So the first one's comfort with ambiguity, and that's around, you know, how I can actually, when I'm in an unfamiliar, new and uncertain environment, what's my initial response? Do I get curious? Do I go and try and find out more about what's going on? Do I step back? Do I freeze? The second category is around your desire for challenging work. So do you actually put yourself forward? Do you look for the innovations? Do you put your hand up? Do you explore? And the third one, which is probably the one that's certainly the one I grapple with the most, is around managing the uncertainty. And it's not about how how my emotions manage it. It's actually how I manage the uncertainty and my team and lead them through it. What's the planning processes? What's the communication I put in place so that I've got some factors about how I can get my team to take that next step forward? And so it's been really quite interesting, you know, utilising this and getting that data. And it's like anything, when people get data, they understand more about themselves and say, well, what do I need to do differently? And more than ever, John, it's just so relevant, because even though please God, the major part of the pandemic is behind us, certainly in our country. Now, as you've just mentioned, we're going into, well, how do we respond? How do we organise ourselves for the next normal? And so this level of disruption, ambiguity and uncertainty, hopefully not to this degree, but it's certainly not going away anytime soon.
Rebecca, small business probably deals with more uncertainty and more ambiguity every day than even some of the biggest sort of corporates. Do you think they were better, that made them better prepared for the uncertainty that we've been going through and yet to go through?
I wouldn't say prepared, but I think that they were better able to react. They were able to move swifter, and they're a little bit more agile. So making big changes quickly can happen easier in a smaller organization, particularly a strong small organization. So you don't need to be large to have, good foundations in your company or in your business and to still be strong. So if you have a decent business model, you have a great team, and you have a wonderful product or service, and you're smaller organizations, chances are you can adapt to change really quickly, which is why they're fairly comfortable with it. But what I am finding though is that this was not like anything that we've experienced. So Australia is constantly going through some sort of event. We have floods, we have fires, we have drought, we have lots of things going on in this country, and small business and rural businesses are able to adapt quickly to those sorts of things. But this was new. So I think that we touched on it before, that planning for this is going to definitely be front of mind moving forward.
I mean, a big ship's sort of harder to turn, isn't it? Martin, do you have any sort of observations around that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Australian universities tend to be a fair bit bigger than international comparisons, but I agree with where Karen and Rebecca were going there, that I actually think it's part of the way that we've responded to so many natural disasters in our country over so many years, that I'd be intrigued to know with Karen's model whether Australian business leaders and people in Australia are a little bit more able to deal with ambiguity than other parts of the world, because certainly the Australian university sector has comparatively done quite well in that move to online and in starting to think about the future, even though the economics for Australian universities are a fair bit more challenging than other places.
So what do you see as the biggest opportunities for our businesses going forward? And I might start with you, Martin, if you don't mind. Or businesses and organisations, what do you see as the biggest opportunities around the corner for them?
Well, I think, I mean, that we've talked there about the next normal. I don't know. I certainly agree with the word next. I'm not sure that normal is going to help many people in their way of thinking, because I think...
Next abnormal just doesn't have as good a ring to it.
No, I'm sure you're right. But it's but if we ever are striving for a normal that's without ambiguity and means that we don't be ready for change, we're going to be very poorly placed for this immediate period and the next things that are going to be coming to us. So
we surveyed our staff to ask them who wants to permanently come back into the office, and I think we had 4. So less than 10% say, yeah, we just want to get back in the office, and they tended to have kids. But everyone else wanted some type of flexibility.
Yeah,
I think that's it. I think flexibility, not treating everybody in exactly the same way, that people are going to have different needs coming out of this. Customers are going to be different in how they're looking to engage with us. That's certainly the case with universities and students. Some people are loving and thriving on an online learning environment. Others just can't wait to get back to a campus. So a one-size-fits-all, normal, unambiguous future, if that's what you're looking for as a business leader, good luck. I can't see it being a very successful purpose to pursue.
What do you see as the opportunities, Karen?
Huge. I think that ambiguity and uncertainty always creates opportunity. So as soon as we can address our fear and angst about it and step into it, then the opportunities are almost endless. I think for organisations and for leaders and individuals to think about, what did we do? How well did we achieve things? And not to lose that story. Like, organisations are built on myths and stories. Let's get rid of the myths, that we can't change, or it's too hard, or we're too slow, because look at what we did, and actually celebrate it. Be proud of the achievement and be absolutely focused on that energy and how you innovated. How did you make decisions? And I think both Martin and Rebecca mentioned the swiftness of decision making has been unbelievable, and it still has been consultative, and now we're going, how do we harness that? That's what I'm talking to leaders about all the time. How do you want to be remembered for your leadership during this pandemic, and what are you going to take forward? I think fundamentally for me, John, and with anyone, is don't get stuck. Don't go back to saying, I just need a little bit more information before I can decide. You were able to take a step forward, continue to do so, because if you're stuck, there's two things that happen. People either run over you or run past you, and both of them are pretty painful, but you just get left behind. And, remind yourself of what you did and write it down, create that story, and keep moving forward. Hold on to decisiveness is one of the absolute key things I would talk about as well.
I can see leaders continuing to refer back to this story for decades to come, don't they? As an accountant, I remember when GST was introduced, and we refer back to, how we trained people on GST back then. But those stories are an incredible way to keep the energy going with what we're implementing, isn't it?
It is. And, so many organisations will have a value around, an organisational value, which will be around innovation. And I have to say, over the couple of decades I've been working in this space, I can't really put my hand on my heart and say I've seen a whole lot of you living that value. But now, as I said earlier, it's been quite extraordinary how many organisations have been incredibly innovative.
So what's a quick to do on that, Karen? What would you say if someone feels they're in an organisation, they say they're innovative, but they don't feel they've been innovative till now, how can they keep that innovation going?
They need to go really quickly. What did we do that was different? What did we do? So one of the fundamental things of innovation, which I think people kind of miss, our creativity builds when we've got boundaries. Put some boundaries around it. We need to get from A to C by next Monday. Here's the budget, here's the resources, and here's your constraints, off you go. And see what people can do, because when we're up against it, our brains, we're really clever. They're wonderful machines. Even though they like predictability, they can go and find a different way to create things. And so put some constraints, and certainly don't mirror the pandemic, but that type of environment, and just see where people can go. The other thing is trust, which Rebecca mentioned earlier. Just let people go. People, generally speaking, most of us are here to do the right thing. And so if you give them a go, give them a chance, you just watch them thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. Rebecca, what do you see as the opportunities out there?
Innovation is, as Karen said, it's this thing that people always said that they did, but maybe didn't do so great, but it has occurred in lots of businesses, and particularly in the non-service businesses or businesses that couldn't quickly move to working from home. They had to come up with a different model to still service their customers. And what I'm hoping what the opportunity is that a lot of these businesses have added new income streams or new delivery service models to their businesses. Keep them going. Don't treat them as temporary. Spread your risk across your business and increase your opportunity for growth. This is what I'm hoping will actually stick, particularly in the small and medium business space, is that that drive for just better processes, better systems, and better customer experiences.
Yeah, and one of the opportunities I see out there as well is that, Australia's always seen itself as an island, I believe, and I actually reckon there's been a lot of digital transformation. That means we don't have to look just on our geographical continent. We can look much, much, much further, and there is a massive opportunity for Australians to now think more global, I think, as well as those other product lines or service lines that they've transformed or added in the last little while. A couple of really quick questions for you guys. What would be one thing that you see a business leader do that undermines their leadership? Who wants to go first?
I'm happy to jump in. One thing they do, they say one thing and do another. They expect somebody to behave in one way, but they wouldn't do it themselves.
Martin?
I think they seek control that just isn't possible.
That goes back to that clarity versus certainty thing, doesn't it? Rebecca?
Not portraying trust to the team, not actually giving them that ability to have a look, discover what it is that they need to do, and trust that they'll come up with the right solution. Yeah,
I mean, we always talk about pigeoning. The pigeon that comes in at the end and flaps the wings and shits on everything. That's a leader that's undermining letting their team sort of do something. And I've been known for it. Don't worry. What would be that? last quick word of advice that you would give anybody that knows their business is going through a lot of change? What should they be doing? What's that number one tip or final word of advice that you'd give them? Karen, can I start with you?
Yeah, sure. For me, it comes back to the don't get stuck, take one step forward. It's okay not to have all the answers, and just make sure that you are progressing every single day. Write it down, keep people informed. Obviously, the communication, the trust, all of those things. But for me, take a step forward.
Just keep going forward. What about you, Martin?
Yeah, I'd look to the people in the team that I was working with, recognise that they're all different, bring out the best in people and move forward together.
Absolutely. Rebecca?
So chances are you didn't have a business continuity plan going into this. I'd suggest get one, and don't do it and stick it on the shelf and forget about it. Bring it back out, revisit it, make sure it still fits your business model.
Absolutely, some great tips there. Now, we've talked about a couple of practical things to sort of do in your business there. And in our wrap up, we'll have some blogs come out in the next little while, which will wrap up the discussion. I'll make sure that includes the link to the change success model I referred to from Mindshop. Karen, can people have a look at the tolerance for ambiguity, or what would you suggest they do there?
Absolutely. If they actually go to our LinkedIn site for Adaptive Minds, which is a ADAPT, so Adapt IQ Minds. We put up some information following this webinar today. They'll be able to access that.
Very good, great. And any of the other little value bombs out of the session today, we'll have them sort of summarised in our blog to summarise our discussion. Thank you so much for your time today, Karen, Martin and Rebecca. Of course, Martin, if anyone wants to get in contact with Martin or see some of the work he's doing, speaking and consulting and so forth, you can go to martinbetts.com. Karen, of course, has Change 2020 and Adaptic with an IQ at the end, Minds. But of course, Rebecca down in our Sydney office is there as well to help you with that clarity rather than certainty. Sounds like cash flow budgets, doesn't it, Rebecca? Clarity rather than certainty. Thank you so much also to our other support partners who've spread the word on Rebound. Please, if there's been a great takeaway that you've had today that you would love to share, please jump on social media and share that with #Rebound so we can get that out there as well. By all means, all our other audience that are still on there, we've got a 15-minute break of overtime, so we've got a 12-minute break until our next session. So at 10 o'clock, we'll be talking about strengthening and protecting your brand during these times. So we've got Dave Prince from Ply, Tyson Cobb from the Business Depot team, and Millie Flynn from Practice Ignition going to be on there. I'm looking forward to that conversation. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck, everybody.
Bye.